Hey everybody, this is the video manual for Clamp by Collider Modular. Now the original purpose for which I designed Clamp was an easy way to constrain the octave range of generated 1 volt per octave pitch sequences. But it has enough functionality that it can be creatively used or misused for other effects as well. Let me show you the fundamentals so that you can see how this can drop into your patches. So you can see here right now that I have the output of Clamp wired up to two things. First, a voltmeter where we can see the numeric value, and also an oscilloscope so we can visually see what's going on. Just to start with, I'm going to start here with this DC source module. And if you're not familiar with DC source, it basically gives you a knob, and as you change the knob, it will change the output control voltage. This will give us a sense to get a better idea of what exactly Clamp is doing. So as we look at the module here, you can see there's just a couple of controls. It's a fairly simple module. We have a mode control here that shows soft and hard clamping, and then there's an upper and a lower octave range. And more or less what Clamp is going to do is it's going to take the input voltage and it's going to constrain it to these octave ranges on the output on the basis of which mode that it's in. So right now, you can see here that I'm going to set the DC source to 0.7 or 0.65 volts. In soft mode, what will happen is Clamp will take the incoming control voltage, it will retain the decimal portion, so you can see over here this 0.65, whatever number is continuing on. So it will retain that decimal portion, but it will enforce that the whole number part of the value is within the lower and upper range. If you're using Clamp with a 1 volt per octave signal, what this means is that it will retain the semi portion or the specific pitch note that you've selected while enforcing a particular octave. Now the other mode here, which is hard mode, will actually behave much more like a brick wall. And anything that is below 2.0, because our lower octave is 2.0, it will automatically make 2.0. So you can see over here on DC, even though I have a value that's much lower, I can move this around all day and I'm only going to get 2 volts out. And then as I go over that amount, you can see now I'm starting to get some specific tonal values in that decimal position. But then as I pass the upper octave range, you can see that I in fact will only get 3 volts. And these are the 2 modes, and depending on what you're doing, you might find that one of these will work better than the other. You can see when I'm in soft mode, even if I'm going above the upper octave, I'm still retaining the decimal portion while enforcing 3 volts or octave range of 3 as my maximum. Generally, as I've been playing around with this, what I have found is that for generated sequences, soft mode tends to be a little bit more natural. If you're using this with a 1 volt per octave signal and you put it in hard mode, you end up getting a lot of repetition of this is effectively C2 and this is C3. And unless your key is C, this will sometimes end up being a little unnatural. That's where soft mode comes in. If you're playing around with control voltages and running control voltages through Clamp, then this hard mode actually ends up making a lot of sense. You can constrain an input value and only get the precision when you're between your 2 ranges here. Now, as you've seen me doing here, you can click up and down on these. One of the features of Clamp is that if the lower octave range becomes greater than the upper octave range, it will intelligently increment the upper octave range. And likewise, if the upper octave range becomes less than the lower octave range, it will march it down. There are ports that will allow you to send a trigger input, and the trigger input will basically act exactly as if the button is clicked. So if I mapped up, for example, a drum sequencer to this, I could increment when this octave was going up and down on a rhythmical pace along with whatever sequence I was passing through it. One last feature I want to show you here real quick, and that is one of the things I did is Clamp supports a really fun randomize mode. It will constrain the top value, so even though Clamp will allow you to keep clicking the up, 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 up button here until you get up to 99, for which I'm not sure why you would want to do that, but it will allow it. When you use random, it will constrain it to a usable value. So you can see here if I hit right click and randomize, you can see I'm going to get different random values out the other end. Now that's also got a hotkey. If you're using Windows, it's Control R, and on Mac, it's Command R. And so one of the fun things that I've been playing with is as I've used Clamp in my own sequences, is if I want to change things up and I just want to get a different octave range or a different sound, I can just highlight the module and hit Command R, and it will randomly give me a different octave range. And you notice that as I'm doing this, it's generating ranges that are generally within what you would expect as something that you might want to listen to. It's not generating a range up in the like 70s, 80s, or 90s range. It's keeping it within 0 to 5. So just to give you a little demo of what clamp sounds like in action, here's a patch that I had prepared for the Zoom video manual. And one of the things, if you've seen that particular video, you might have noticed that as these interval values over here started getting really high, the comfort of listening to those really high intervals, those really high octave hits, it wasn't great. So here's our bass sequence. And as we start to add in these higher intervals here, it starts getting a little high for maybe what I was thinking would be nice. And this is where clamp can come in, because we can add clamp into this pitch flow here and really control what exactly it is that we're going to hear. So while we have this right now, I'm going to patch in clamp. And you can hear that now we've kind of constrained it to a nice level, and maybe we want to bring it down. Maybe 2's a little high and we want to get more of those bass frequencies. Here's hard mode, by the way. Well, anyways, that gives you an idea of how you can use clamp to control the overall range of your voices and give you a bit more performance time flexibility for what you're doing. I hope you have lots of fun with it.